I firmly believe that anybody can learn to manage a production. On paper, it is logistics, communication, and problem solving. I don't just think about the work that I do, I think very deeply about how I do the work that I do. And this video is going to show a list of tools that I use every day that has come out of that 10 years of thinking. All right, we're starting with the granddaddy of them all, which is Things 3. So I started my career tracking tasks on legal pad and pen and paper, and I just like the feeling of crossing things off. But at some point, I came across Things 3, which is a task management software, and it was the first app that I had ever used that made me think differently about how I worked. Not just what I needed to do, but when I needed to do it and what order I needed to do it. And that kind of opened the floodgates for all of the productivity hacks that I developed over the next decade. Things is a very comprehensive app, but in terms of production, there are 3 things that I value really specifically about this app. The first thing is my project template. Okay, this production template has close to 300 individual tasks that I will likely encounter over the course of a given production. Every department, every phase, everything I know that I'm going to need to deal with on a given production, it's going to be in here. And I'm actually going to do a full comprehensive deep dive on this template at some point. So there could be a link up here that shows that it's live. And if not, just go through my channel and maybe it'll be there. So the template aside, one of the biggest things that was huge for me was the scheduling feature. And the scheduling feature just allowed me to anticipate things before they needed to happen. So for example, I have this section that is entirely dedicated to the things I want to have checked off the day before a shoot. So if I know that the shoot is happening in, say, 2 weeks, 14 days, then what I will do is I will come in here, I will select everything in the day before section, and I will assign it to 13 days away. It will pop up with the date. I will select it. And now when April 12th comes up, all of these tasks will pop up and I know what I will need to tackle for that day. And the next major thing about this is the quick entry system. So if I press Control Spacebar, this window pops up, which will allow me to put in a task and assign it to where I want it to go. So for example, let's say I need to remember that I need to put in the permit or get the final permit. So we're going to put finalize permit with Film LA. Let's say I need to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to put it into BOB template. Press enter. And we'll see that this shifted. So if we go all the way back to the top, we'll see that finalize permit with Film LA has now been entered in here. And this thing works in any window. So I could be in my email, I could be in the internet browser, I could be in a Zoom call. It doesn't matter. I press Control Spacebar and it will open that window and I can assign a task to whenever or wherever I need to. Next up, let's move on to Claude. All right, Claude is a non-negotiable at this point. I cannot imagine doing this job without it. And so I think the thing that really struck me the most is probably the project feature and then the files section that allows you to give context to a project that I'm working on. I would have templated texts that I would insert into the chat so I would have an understanding of what I'm doing. But now I have these film production instructions that basically tells Claude, hey, here is how I work. Here is my workflow. Here are things that I like to do. Here are idiosyncrasies about how I work as a production manager. But even aside from the projects, one of the things that is great about it is once you start a chat within a project, the longer that you use that chat, the longer you use it on a job, the more context it will accumulate. So locations, talent, vendor details, production notes, scheduling, all of these little things that you pick up and learn over the course of a job, at a certain point, Claude starts behaving less like a tool and more like a de facto coordinator because it knows the job that I'm working on. Again, there's going to be a video covering all of these aspects because I use it to build schedules. I use it to draft emails. I use it to cross-reference credit card statements against purchase order logs. I use it to actualize budgets. Like, that library is going to keep growing, but this thing is the single greatest game changer to my job that has ever happened in the last 10 years. All right, moving on to TextExpander, which I do have a full video on as well, which you can check out here. TextExpander and Claude are the 2 that have probably saved me the most time out of anything on this list. Now, TextExpander is a text expansion where you define a short abbreviated term. Then when you type out that abbreviation, it will change that abbreviation into whatever text you have programmed for it. So very simply, one of the things that I have is my initials. I don't want to type my whole name because my first name is 9 letters and my last name is 6 letters. So instead, what I will do is I will type my initials ND, and then when I press space, TextExpander automatically fires in the background and it will replace it with my full name. This is a very simple example. Another one is today's date. Instead of typing it out on the keyboard and hunting and pecking, I will type TDY as a shorthand for today, press space, and it will automatically replace that TDY space with today's date. These two are super simple, but just to show you how robust this can be, I'm going to show you a template that I used to use as a prompt within ChatGPT or Claude when I was actualizing before project instructions were actually a thing. So I'll go into here, I'll pull up the search menu, and I will type wrap CSV, which brings two options that I have, and I will press V2, enter, and it will pop in all of this text right here. And what this is full receipt processing instructions for the Showbiz Budgeting program that I use. And it gives it a comprehensive overview, workflow, core fields, outline things that I want it to use or not use, standardization for dates, identification types for different types of transactions. And this version alone took my actualization timing from 2 to 2.5 hours to maybe 20 minutes. The fact that I could have this comprehensive context for this very tedious process at my fingertips was incredible. All right, next up, we're going to pull Numbers. So Numbers is Apple's equivalent of Microsoft Excel. And I use it for one specific reason, which is call sheets. The beauty of Numbers is that it allows me to create separate, independent blocks of information. So I can have this header block right here. I can have all of the department and crew info down here, and I can have all of the client, vendor, and talent info over here. Each of these things can be sized and formatted independently of the other. Whatever I do in this block will not affect what's going on in this block. Because in Excel, everything is one continuous grid of rows and columns. So say, for instance, I need to modify this whole row right here. Well, in Excel, it's going to affect this row right here. Whereas now I can have each one functioning like its own individual sheet. And the main thing for me is that it just reduces friction when it comes to building the call sheet. Very small niche detail, but once I pivoted from Excel to building call sheets in Numbers, never wanted to go back. All right, next up is a very film production specific program, which is Showbiz Budgeting. This is the program that I use to track the budgets across all jobs. There are a number of budgeting programs out there, but Showbiz is the one that I have used the most, the one that I feel most comfortable with, the one I feel is the most robust. The other main budgetary program you will probably run into out in commercial production is going to be Hot Budget, which is an Excel-based budget that was built by the guys who founded the production supply company Hot Bricks. It is a fantastic program, especially considering that it was built from the ground up by production people. So I have a lot of admiration for that. Showbiz is the one that really stands apart for me when it comes to its robust features in terms of its detail section. The reason is in Excel, you can put one number per cell. So say, for example, I put 550 right here. 550 is the only number that I can put in that line. That becomes an issue if you start to have lines where you have a number of different vendors and a number of different costs that are adding up. Because you'll basically need to put a sum of whatever those numbers are, but then separately, you'll need to know how to track what costs actually encompass that number. So in Showbiz, you have something called the detail feature over here, where if I go to this actual and I click on this number, you'll actually see that this number right here is actually made up of 5 individual transactions. Every line in this budget has a detail window where you can enter these individual costs with their own descriptions, and it will summate them automatically. So if something changes, all I have to do is go in, double click, a window will pop up right here, and then I can adjust it on a granular level. And for complex budgets, this granularity is absolutely worth it to somebody like me. Now, the one thing that I will say where Showbiz falls short is in its actualization feature. You'll see here when you pull this up, in order to enter expenses into the detail, you do have to put in these detail windows and enter all of this information manually. Or so I thought. I learned that Excel actually will support importing CSV files as long as the header names are correctly named. So I actually have a template that I built where I will build my actuals in that Excel sheet, and then I will import it into here so that it goes to all the correct accounts and is labeled correctly. It's faster, it's cleaner, and I will eventually be doing a video that shows that workflow as well. Next up, I'm going to talk about 2 apps that have changed how I navigate my computer when I'm working. So the first one is going to be an app called Magnet. And what Magnet does is it allows you to automatically resize windows to particular sizes or particular positions. You can come up here and you can select them, or there are also keyboard shortcuts. But for example, if we click top left, it will automatically move that window to the top left. We go up here again. We can move the window to the top right. Or if you want to get really fancy with the keyboard shortcuts, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, center. You can move them corners like this. Like the speed with which you can do this is baffling. And so, for example, if I'm doing actualizations, it isn't uncommon for me to put an Excel sheet on one side here and then my budget over here on the other side. Without Magnet, I'd be manually resizing windows all day long. So the next app that I'm going to talk about is a little piece of genius called Yoink, which actually this doesn't do it justice. But what Yoink is, it is nothing more than a holding bin for files. You click on a file, you drag it, you'll see this little option pop up, and you can put it in that holding bin. You'll see that it positions itself over here. Let's say I want to do another one. Let's put another one in there. That one is now here. Let's say, for instance, I need to move these two to a different folder. So I'm like, all right, cool. We're going to move these 3 files out of here. We need to move them down to PO number 12. Well, now I have them all in here. Let me select them all, and I can drag them in here. You will now see that all of them have been moved out of the Hot Bricks folder and into PO number 12. If we want to do the same thing, we can select them all. We'll drag them all in here. It shows a stack of them, which you can then unstack. We'll select them all again. We'll go back to Hot Bricks and we'll drag them back in here where they belong. And this works for pretty much any file. Like you can drag files out of your email. You can drag images out of a browser. You can take screenshots and you can drag them in there. You can highlight a link in your browser, drag that link into Yoink, and then drag it into a folder, and it will save it as a web page that you can click on and open. Again, this sounds super trivial, but when you are moving files between folders and emails and Dropbox all simultaneously, it becomes genuinely useful. Especially if you're navigating between screens, being able to simply just drag it, put it in a holding pen, and leave it there. I can go do some other task that I need to knock out if I get distracted, and then I'll be like, oh wait, yeah, I gotta move this thing back to where it was. I didn't forget it. It was just sitting there waiting for me. All right, next up is my Google Sheets crew sheet and accompanying crew database. If you click the link up here, you will see the full breakdown that I have on this. This is actually one of the first videos I did. And this was born out of a desire to never want to have to look up crew contact info again. So what I have here is a master database with all of the information, names, phone number, Instagram handles, departments, whatever, of people that I have worked with. And then I'm able to pull this master database into any crew list or job that I'm working on. So in this case, this is just my sample crew sheet. Here's everything. I've imported it from that database, so it's actually local within this spreadsheet. And then I've actually set it up where I have a drop-down menu of all of the crew in here. So anytime I change the name, it will automatically change the phone number and email for that crew. Again, if you find yourself working on jobs where you're working with the same people very often, having a master database like this just makes life so much easier. It's one less aspect of friction that you have to deal with in terms of getting the appropriate information in the right place to be able to send out to people. And the last one that I have to share is actually my internet browser itself. This is called the Arc browser. And the main thing that you will notice is that it is actually a left-hand vertical sidebar. It does not have a horizontal set of tabs going above it. And it's actually broken up into 2 sections. So up top basically functions as the master favorites tab. Then I can break down these tabs in terms of folder structures and context based on what I'm working on. So right now on my current job, I've got a crew sheet and a shoot schedule that I can tie to it. And then I have another folder, which is called reference. And this is for anything that I will use across multiple jobs. So for example, I have my crew database here. It could be other things. It could be various payroll portals. It could be, like union rates that I want to be able to pull up at a moment's notice. Anything that I open over the course of the day sits at the bottom right here. And the beauty of this is that this section will actually clear out at the end of every day. So if there is something that I need to have, I can contextually move that up here so that it will sit and not get deleted. And it's actually kind of great to come back to a browser with all the tabs cleared out. Like, I've actually never lost anything important letting my tabs get deleted at the end of every night because I have saved the most important ones up top. What I have done is stopped navigating through 40 open tabs trying to figure out what's still relevant to me. The other thing in Arc that's worth knowing about is a thing called spaces, where each space is essentially its own context window. So right here in production work, this is all related to the production company that I primarily work for. Then when I do freelance work outside of them, I'll usually go to the general tab here. And then for everything Back Office Bandit related, I go to the Back Office Bandit. and the beauty of these spaces is that each one of these is its own set of tabs. It is its own set of folders. It is its own set of logins that are contextual to this space specifically. So this Gmail up top is my personal Gmail. This Gmail up here is a work Gmail. And then this Gmail right here is for the back office bandit. So all of those logins are contextually tied to that space. And it helps because I'm not necessarily hunting or crossing wires between jobs. I will be able to go to a given context window and be like, all right, this is what I'm working in right now. That's the run of it, guys. You made it through the stack. And here's the thing about it. All of this was built through trial and error. Like, in some ways, you can't shortcut the trial and error of figuring out how you work. Phase 3 coming up was the thing that started it all. Like, I wasn't looking for it, but when I found out about it and I had a person describe it to me in a sense that I understood, I was like, oh, this is going to change everything for me. And then I became obsessed with optimization. But the thing is, like, there were tools that I was so obsessed with finding, but it was more because I just wanted some shiny new thing to be able to show, oh, hey, look how great my workflow is now. But in actuality, those things didn't really move the needle like they should have. And then there were things that I just did manually the hard way for years. And one day something just clicked. Like, a solution existed the whole time, but I just hadn't reached for it yet. The most useful habit that I've built in terms of coming up with this workflow is taking stock after every job. Any stressful moment that comes up, just be like, is there a way I could have avoided that? Is there a way I could have done this faster? Sometimes the answer is no, but sometimes it will point directly to the next thing that is worth building. And I want to be honest about my motivation here about so many of these things. It isn't about impressing folks or being seen as organized. I genuinely do not want to do work that I don't have to do. If I can minimize the repetitive admin layer, then I get to spend that time getting ahead on the job. Or when something inevitably does break on the job, I'll be a lot less stressed and be better suited to fixing that problem. This tech stack is 10 years worth of thinking that way, and it will probably look different in another 10 years. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys on the next one.